This happened in the fall of 2021 when I was living alone in a rented townhouse in southern Illinois. It was my first time ever living by myself. Even though I was technically an adult, 27 years old with a full-time job and a stable routine, I still had a lot of nerves about the idea. I had just gone through a rough breakup and thought the silence and solitude might help me process everything. The townhouse was part of a small row of identical units, plain but clean and quiet, tucked away in a sleepy cul-de-sac just off a rural highway. The neighborhood had that sterile suburban vibe: beige vinyl siding, trimmed hedges, wind chimes, and mailboxes with stenciled family names. It was mostly older folks with a few young families, and while I didn't know any of my neighbors well, I liked it that way. I kept to myself. Almost right away, though, I noticed one person who stood out. He lived 3 doors down, a tall, heavy-set man, probably in his mid-40s, with a scruffy beard and a weird habit of standing outside his house at night. Sometimes he paced or smoked, but often he just stood there, doing nothing at all, staring. I'd pull into my driveway after work around 9 or 10 p.m., and there he'd be, leaning against his porch rail or standing at the edge of his driveway facing the street. He never waved, never smiled, not even when I looked directly at him. I tried to ignore it. A couple of times I mentioned it to friends or my mom, and they said maybe he was just a night owl or had insomnia. But there was something unsettling about him, like he was always watching but never part of the world around him. He didn't fidget, check his phone, or shift his weight. He just stood there, still as a statue. I told myself not to be paranoid, but that gnawing feeling in my gut kept growing. Then the noises started. It was around mid-September when I first heard it. I had just gotten home from work after a long shift. I worked late hours managing inventory at a distribution center and usually got home around 10:30 p.m. That night, I fell asleep around midnight. At exactly 2:37 a.m., I woke up to a sound I can only describe as metal scraping against wood. At first, I thought I had dreamed it, but then I heard it again. A long, slow creaking noise like an old gate opening. My bedroom was on the first floor at the back of the unit, and I had a sliding glass door with vertical blinds that led to a small fenced-in backyard. I sat up in bed, heart racing, and listened. Then I heard footsteps, soft crunching sounds like someone walking slowly across gravel. My backyard had decorative rock instead of grass, so you could hear every step clearly. These weren't animal sounds. I grabbed my phone and crept out of bed. I didn't have a weapon, just a dull kitchen knife I kept in my nightstand, which felt ridiculous at the time. I crouched by the window and peeked through the blinds, but couldn't see anything. The motion light wasn't on, which meant they were either out of range or had come in another way. I dialed 911. The dispatcher was calm, took my address, and said officers were en route. I crouched in the dark, barely breathing. About 10 minutes later, red and blue lights flickered through the front window. I opened the door and met 2 officers outside. I explained everything. One officer walked around the back while the other stayed with me. The officer returned and said the gate was closed and there were no signs of tampering, no footprints, no damage, basically no crime. One of them even said, "Probably just a raccoon," and gave me a look that said I was wasting their time. I didn't argue. They left after 10 minutes, and I didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning, I went outside to check the backyard myself. That's when I noticed something strange. There was a flat stone, about the size of a paperback book, wedged under the bottom edge of the wooden gate. I hadn't noticed it before. The gate had a heavy spring that made it swing shut automatically, but the stone had clearly been placed there to stop it from closing. It was subtle, like something someone would do if they wanted to come back later and slip in without making noise. I picked it up and threw it across the yard. I called the police again and told them what I found. They noted it in the report, but said there wasn't much they could do. I asked if they could talk to the neighbors or check for cameras. They said unless a crime had been committed, they couldn't investigate. I felt like I was losing my mind. 2 nights later, it escalated. At exactly 2:14 a.m., I woke up again, this time to the sound of my back door handle turning. It rattled gently at first, like someone testing it, then jiggled harder, like they were trying to open it. I sat up in bed, heart hammering. I couldn't see anything through the blinds, but I could feel someone standing on the other side. My mouth went dry. I picked up my phone with shaking hands and called the police again. I crouched in the hallway, out of view. I didn't have a gun, or even a dog, just that stupid knife. The motion light clicked on, and through a gap in the blinds, I saw a shadow move across the glass. It was a man. He didn't run or hide. He just stood there. The same 2 officers showed up again. This time, they actually found footprints in the gravel, big ones, leading straight to the door. But again, since no entry had been made, there wasn't enough to go on. They promised to patrol the area more often and reminded me to keep my doors locked. The next day, I installed security cameras, one above the back door and another above the front porch. That night, I didn't go to bed. I sat in the dark living room, watching the live feed on my phone. 2:14 a.m. came and went. Nothing. Then, at 2:23, the back camera triggered. A man stepped into frame. He moved through the gate like he knew exactly how to avoid the motion sensor until the last second. He was tall, broad, wearing a black hoodie, jeans, and gloves. He walked up to the door, looked directly into the camera, and smiled, a slow, stretched-out grin. Then he backed away, still staring, and vanished into the dark. I called the police again. They came back, watched the footage, and finally admitted it was unsettling. But since he didn't break in, damage anything, or appear armed, they still claimed there was nothing they could do. They wouldn't even ask the guy down the street to check his doorbell cam. I begged them. They said their hands were tied. That night, I packed a bag and stayed in a hotel. When I came back the next day, I found 4 muddy handprints on the glass door, 2 high up, 2 low, like someone had crouched and just rested their hands there, watching. I moved out a week later. I broke the lease, forfeited the deposit. I didn't care. I couldn't stay another night. The final straw was the note I found wedged in my mailbox the day I left. It was handwritten on lined paper in small, cramped letters. It said, "The cops leave, but I don't." I filed one last police report. That officer actually looked disturbed and promised to do a wellness check on the neighborhood, but it was too late. I never went back. About a month later, I got a Facebook message from a girl named Kayla. She said she had just moved into the unit after me. Her message read, "Hi, sorry to bother you. I think you used to live here. Did you ever have someone in a black hoodie hanging around the backyard? I keep hearing footsteps at night. And last night someone knocked on the glass door around 2 a.m. and just stood there." I didn't reply. I didn't want to know what happened.